Hi, Christine.
Hello.
So we're doing a little bit of a hybrid facilitation tonight as we hand off to our chair and co-chairs. So Riley, if you want to start with the land acknowledgement, that would be great.
Sure. So we will open our Affordable Housing Resident Oversight Committee meeting tonight with the land acknowledgement. So thank you to Tony Iskashola and Thompson Smith and the Salish Gillespie Cultural Committee and Emily Armstrong for recommending key language of tonight's acknowledgement. So we as members of the housing system in Missoula acknowledge that we are in the homelands of the Salish and Gillespie people. Today we offer our respect for their history and culture, for their ancient and continuing presence in this landscape, and for the path they have shown us in caring for this place for the future generations to come. We recognize the ways in which systems of government have contributed to the disconnections of Indigenous peoples from these lands and their families, culture, and heritage. It is our responsibility as individuals and as a collective to acknowledge the white supremacist culture underlying our practices, to be accountable to demanding respect for tribal sovereignty and Indigenous cultures and the needs and perspectives of Indigenous peoples. As the committee continues to acknowledge with deep gratitude this land, may we also move toward action to redistribute power and resources to communities directly harmed by historical and current practices of colonization, to embrace conversations and behavior that leads to structural changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we want to go ahead and do a roll call vote? Zoe, were you going to do the roll call?
Yep, I'll do the roll call.
Thank you.
Okay, so tonight we have an excused absence from John Egan and possibly Jerry Steffarm as well. And then Lori Davidson will be joining a little bit later, around 6:30, and I will mark her present when she enters the meeting. So I'm just going to call out your names. If you could please let me know that you're here, I will mark you present. So we've got Heidi West.
Here.
Paul Herendeen.
Here.
Laura Bird. Is Laura here? Looks like maybe
She's connecting to audio.
Okay. All right, so I've got Laura and then Katie Carlson.
Here.
Will Seaburn.
Here.
Misty Brown.
Here.
Christine Liddig.
Here.
Riley Jacobson.
Here.
And Bobby Weston.
Here.
Okay. Looks good. Thanks.
Great. And then we'll move on to the approval of the prior minutes. Did everybody have a chance to review the minutes, and are there any changes? If there isn't any, can we get a motion to approve the minutes?
Yeah, so moved.
Great. Can we get a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Great. If not, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. And then we will move on to introductions. Now, name, pronouns, and role. And I can go ahead and start. My name is Katie Carlson, and I go by she, her, and I am a realtor and serve as the housing person on the board or on the committee. Somebody want to go next? Heidi?
Sorry, trouble in muting. I'm Heidi West, she, her, and I'm the city council liaison to this board. And I'm going to have to step away for a few minutes. I apologize, but I'll be back.
My name is Misty Brown, she, her. My role is I'm a housing nonprofit.
My name is Christine Littig, she, her, and I am not a liaison, acting committee member appointed by the county commissioners.
My name's Riley Jacobson, first alternate committee member appointed by the mayor. He is pronouns.
Will Seaburn, Will Seaburn, he, him, community member.
I'm Paul Herendeen, he, him. I represent the financial sector as part of my day job with Clearwater Credit Union.
Bobby Weston, she, her. I am second alternate community member.
It looks like maybe Laura is the last one.
My name is Laura Bird. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am the eligibility specialist for All Nations Health Center. I'm a community member elected by City Council.
Great.
Thank you.
Emily, we were going to have guests introduce themselves too, or just the committee?
Yeah, guess would be good.
Okay. Dwight, do you want to introduce yourself?
Certainly. Dwight Easton, Public Affairs Director for Missoula Organization of Realtors. I'm the panelist this evening to hopefully lead you through our housing report.
Great. And then Zoe and Emily, did you guys want to introduce yourselves?
So you can go first.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Zoe Walters, pronouns she, her, and I am the admin with Community Development.
And I'm Emily Harris Shears, use she, her pronouns. I'm the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Administrator, and I'm one of the staff of the committee.
Thanks. Emily, the review of norms. I can't remember what we do for that part. Okay. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about the norms? Great. Okay, then we'll move on to any public comment on non-agenda items.
Great. Can you actually skip to the next slide?
Oh, yeah.
Better one. Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so this is a Zoom webinar, and you can participate by calling in from a landline or a cell phone using one of the phone numbers on today's agenda. And once you're in the meeting, you can press *9 to raise your hand and be recognized for public comment. You will, if you're calling in from the phone, you will press *6 to mute and unmute. And if you join the meeting from a computer or a smartphone, you can use the raise and lower hand feature, and that'll recognize you for public comment. And any alternate ways to participate at a later time, you can still do that through mail, email, or voicemail. And on the screen here, you'll see phone numbers and emails where you can contact us. And let me see if we have any guests right now. Doesn't look like it. All right, no comment at this moment.
Okay, great. Financial reports.
We don't have any tonight.
Okay. And then really just moving on to the informational items, the knowledge building, and Dwight Easton, who is the Public Affairs Director of Missoula Organization of Realtors, is going to present on the Five Valley Housing Report. And I've worked with Dwight on a number of things, and I'm excited. The housing report, for some people who don't know, it's online this year and it's fluid, and so it's being updated as more quarterly information comes out. So I will hand it over to Dwight.
Thank you very much, Katie. We will start with believe that is our first screen. This is where we would locate the housing report. It is at missoularealestate.com.
Hey, Dwight, it doesn't look like it's being shared.
I can talk about it, but I can't share it. There we go.
There we
I
go.
got a little green light all around it. Are we seeing the missoularealestate.com landing page? Excellent. Thank you. I bring you to this page first just because there's an awful lot of information about the organization. But if you wanted to go over here, the housing report is clear out to the far right. And we'll be moving through a number of the various pages. As Katie pointed out, this is our first year that we have gone to a web-based housing report. For the previous 15 years, we have been in a paper format. And in doing so, there's some things that, that you get comfortable with over time in a paper format that we try to replicate a little bit in this report, but also recognizing that the old report was once a year. And we are trying to keep this more up to date and fresh so that in a number of situations, you'll find that it's quarterly data. How often we're able to refresh the data is often driven by the sources. So there's going to be some sources you're going to see that you'll ask, well, why are we still looking at 2018 or 2019 data? And some of those data elements come from the American Community Survey, and they are not updated as frequently as we might all like. With that being said, this is the landing page. It will bring you into the different data sets. But what I wanted to point out is there is also this download of some marketing stories. So we took a little bit more in-depth look at a couple of elements that you might be interested in. One is the Sutup Cane area of development, and the second is a migration data. There was an awful lot of discussion about where people might be coming from into the Missoula Valley. We weren't able to answer that definitively, but I think we give you some good ideas of where to go and to look. What we would like this to be is an opportunity or a source of reliable information for everyone in the community, those who look at housing data and would like to have kind of a comprehensive look at the housing market. We've broken it down into 4 major categories. You'll see across the bottom there: social data, sales data, supply, and rental. So if we start in the sales data element, and this is, I'll just kind of go through for both a little bit of the navigation that goes on, as well as we talk through some of these various slides. You'll see down here one of the quickest ways to get around once you've gotten into a certain set of slides is to open this up at the bottom, and you can jump between the various different views. So in starting in sales type, you'll also know as you slide across that you'll see pop-ups. So in the year 2020, which was the year end last year, the median sales price for all homes finished at $350,000. As you slide up here, you'll see that through the second quarter, it is now $430,000 for all homes. If you wanted to break that out by a particular unit type, this being mobile home, is now $260 is the median price for mobile homes. And you can do the same thing for condominiums and townhomes. If we go to the next slide, this would be a little bit more static in the sense that this talks about the various types of homes. We've broken it out into, again, single family, mobile home, condominiums, and townhomes. Because the way the slides are developed, this one stays on an annual basis. But then you can see if you are interested in where are the homes being sold at what price ranges. In 2020, you can see that from $0 to $150,000, there were 5 sales in single family homes. If you go all the way up to over 750,000, there were 59 homes sold at that price range. This is a kind of dynamic map. This is how we in the MLS have broken out a various number of neighborhoods. We cannot categorize all the neighborhoods that are found in the various neighborhood councils, so we kind of group them together. So if you were to look in kind of over this area, the Lewis and Clark neighborhood, which would include some of the Farview and some of those, there were 155 homes sold in 2020 with the median price of $385. The size of the balloon kind of gives you some sense of the numbers of sales. And then the pricing is a little bit more difficult to follow, as the more pinkish is the higher prices, the more blue, slightly lower. The Mullen area road, as one would expect, is probably the fastest, has the most number of sales. It's one of the areas in which we see the most development. If you were to go to some places that are such as the Grant Creek area, pretty well built out, a total of 49 homes were sold for a median price of $499,000. You can also highlight by hitting Control. You should be able to get just the neighborhood itself. And then it doesn't always work for me.
Hey, Dwight, do you want folks to ask questions as we go through, or would you rather have us hold them till the end?
I'll probably bore you to death if you don't ask questions.
Okay. I think Paul had a question.
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Just a quick one. These are actual sales data, right? This is, so you have access to this as part of the real estate industry that we don't, to get the actual sales prices?
Thank you, Paul. This is sales data from the MLS. So all the realtors in the city belong to the association. So basically we figure it's about 85 to 90% of all sales taking place in our area.
Gotcha. It's the actual sales price, not listing price, right?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
And we use median because median is more indicative. You can have some pretty large sales that will drive the average sales price up, whereas median will get you closer to giving a better look over time. This is neighborhoods. Again, you can select individual neighborhoods if you wanted, or you can select all. This is kind of a dynamic table. So we'll go clear back to 2005. You'll see here, there we go. So if you do hover over there, you can see that in 2005, the Mullen Road Expressway sold 234 units at a median price of $158,500. If we put this in motion, what you're looking at is the median price on the y-axis and number of units sold on the x-axis. So as we get into 2021, it moves all the way back into lower number of units sold. But what you can see here shows you that from 2005 to about 2014, we had that kind of an economic downturn, and price stayed pretty static. You saw a little bit of back and forth in number of units, but as we hit 2015, pricing started to take off, and you'll see that in some of the other graphs.
Dwight, it looks like Will has a question.
I'm sorry, I can't see anybody hand raised.
Oh, we raise our hands usually,
Okay.
but you can't see that when you're screen
Oh,
sharing, so
yeah.
I'll cruise direct for you.
I appreciate that. Yes.
Like, could you go back just one slide? I just had a question about like the geographic boundaries for the data. So like, for instance, I see all the neighborhoods broken out. So is there a way you could get like just the city of Missoula data through going through these dashboards by like deselecting like Lolo, for example, or is it, or like target range? If you just wanted like city of Missoula, is there a way to distinguish like what's within city limits versus non-city limits?
On these particular graphs, I don't believe there is. We haven't done that between
Okay.
city and non-city, but we do, and that brings up a good point. Will, thank you. As a bit of a segue, and maybe I'm going to answer the question you would ask, and that is the urban area. What is the urban area? The urban area runs kind of out towards East Missoula, Clinton area. To the west, it goes about to the Y, and that's kind of the northwest corner. Does not go into Frenchtown and goes just into Lolo, just slightly south of Lolo. So it is more encompassing than just the city, because obviously we have Orchard Home, Target Range in there, which is county land, but it isn't just the city and it isn't just the county.
Cool. So like that all up number, I forget what we're at for 2021 so far, like the 430, I think is what it's at. That includes everything like from Clinton to Lolo. And then, so that's not just like city of Missoula. And so presumably you could probably assume based on some of that neighborhood data that the median price for city of Missoula is probably higher than what that number is for the whole area.
I haven't, I should look into that. Let me get back to you on that, but I can tell you that different neighborhoods are below the 430. So it does encompass a little bit more than just the city, but I could definitely get back to you on what the median for just the city is.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Happy to do that. Write that down. I'll run that through Emily.
Bobby has a question as well, and I'm happy to share information back with the group too.
Yes, I was wondering. So this is median data. So that's the lowest that's sold and the highest that's sold and what's smack dab in the middle, right? Not the average, correct?
That would be correct.
So if a mobile home sells for 50,000 and that lowers the amount of what's smack dab in the middle if a whole bunch of homes are selling for a lot more than that. Is that correct?
Well, I think this would possibly help you with that discussion. In 2020, you'll see that there were 5 homes that were sold between 0 and 150. The bulk of the market is between 301,000 and 450, with more than, a good percentage, and I should probably figure out what the percentage is, but between 150 and 450. So I think the median is a pretty good representation of what the pricing is. There are some outliers. We have 59 homes that sold in excess of $750,000. Some of those are in excess of $1 million. Does that help?
It helps a little bit, but it also makes me wonder, like, just about the way that we're figuring out what is considered low income housing and what exactly is the affordable housing that we're looking at if we're basing it off of a median instead of an average. But we've got 5 people that are doing, or 5 homes that sold for less than 150,000, and then the rest of them are, lots higher, where more than half of them are above the what is the median amount.
I will defer on that particular one to the committee, but I think there are some. Emily, I think you're on mute.
Yep. It looks like Paul wants to say something too. Thanks for raising.
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm a reformed stats nerd. So the median means that half of the units sold are below that price, and then half of the units sold are above that price. It's not the middle between the lowest price and the highest price. So like an average can get pulled up by a single large value. The joke is always that when Bill Gates walks into the room, the average income in the room is $100 million a year, right? But mine is still what it is, and his is still what it is. So just wanted to make a note about that real quick.
Okay, because according to this info that I'm seeing, the way it looks is that if it's 450, but those numbers that we were seeing showed that a lot more than half of them seem to be above that price.
Yeah, we should look into that. So if the median price is 450, that means that half of the units sold should be below 450 somewhere.
I think it's worth noting that this is the 2020 data, and I think the 2020 median was what, Dwight, like 380, 350. So that might be why it looks, we're using the 2021 median, but this is 2020 data we're seeing right now. So that might explain why it's a little confusing right now.
And
that might make the difference there.
So one of the other items that was discussed in 2020 was, again, migration folks coming into the area. And so in 2020, you did see kind of a, well, we have a shortage of supply. And so you'll see that in as people, the amount of percent of original list price and then what the final sales price is. And in 2020, we had moved to where the ask and the final sale was about 100%. And as we moved into 2021, you'll see where single family homes, there were bidding wars. And so to get to 104% on original ask to final sales price means that there was a lot more folks who were looking to buy homes than there were homes in the marketplace. And we'll show that in the supply slide as well. One of the other items that has been kind of discussed is all cash buyers. And all cash buyers, I can defer probably to your chair. She can talk to a little bit more about how that impacts the sale. But cash buyers, we did see an uptick in cash buyers from kind of running along here at about 19 to 17, and then an uptick in the first half of the year to 22%. So it is something that is, folks who have cash have the ability to possibly bid up a little bit more than folks who are in conventional. But there, we do still have most of the homes being sold as conventional, 72%.
Dwight, it looks like we have questions. Bobby, is your hand raised from a previous question or do you have another one? Okay, and then Will.
Oh, thanks. Dwight, can you hover over the right slide here again? Because I was looking at this beforehand too, and I thought what was interesting was it seems like there was a dip in FHA and VA share. And I feel like when we're thinking about affordable housing, like those are probably more of like the loan products we're thinking about. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but conventional would mean 20% down. Is that correct in most cases, or could there be other situations?
I think in conventional, I think that's, I've been told, and I'm not an expert on this, but I've been told that they will take all the way down to 3 and 5% in conventional.
Okay, that's good. Paul, does that sound right to you?
Yeah, that's right. Basically, conventional would just mean not part of a specific program, but they can have below 20% down payment loans, and then you end up just paying PMI. Along with that, too, I'll just note briefly, I know that nationally, there's been a trend toward people, even the people who do take mortgages are in the high credit tiers. So like something like 75% of folks getting a mortgage nationally in the last year have been top tier credit. It's a big shift in that distribution as well.
So I think like the question I was curious about, and like Paul, maybe you have some insights on this too, is like it does seem like we were going from historically like FHA and VA were representing like anywhere combined like 5 to 7% versus it looks like it's more like 2 to 3% of all the transactions now. Like, do you think there's anything to be interpreted there, that there's like a challenge where people who traditionally use those loan products, maybe it's because of the credit score you mentioned that they're not able to get into the housing market, or is it just the prices are too high and those programs have like, I don't know if they have like maxes on how much you can use to buy a house, but would be curious if anyone has insight, if that's like a signal of something that's going on.
I mean, Dwight would probably know better than I do. I think it could be two things. One is just that regular mortgage prices are so low right now. If you're getting a traditional mortgage at 3%, going through the additional rigmarole for those programs doesn't really net you much. And then the second one is, I think my suspicion is it still comes back to a supply problem. First-time home buyers, especially ones who need assistance or very low down payment mortgages, simply don't have units that they can find that they can afford.
I think there's also one other element that I've heard, and maybe I'll defer to Katie if she wants to add more to this, but I think it takes a little bit longer for some of those other loan products. And so if you are competing, which many times you are competing, people will look at that and say, well, this is a normal conventional, or this is cash. And this is even if the price might be slightly different, they're more inclined to go with the easier, faster close.
I will say, I think that conventional is more likely to close. And I think the other thing that I guess I saw with a lot of our agents is that the rental market seems to be hemorrhaging single family homes of people who now want to sell because the prices are so good. And if something's been a rental for a long time, it might not be in a condition that a VA or FHA could be loaned on it. It would have to be a conventional mortgage, whether that's, handrails missing or some chipped paint, that those things are not going to go VHA and FHA, and more people can get conventional anyways. So that's just another part of it.
On this slide, it will give you the number of units sold versus the price, median price. Again, you'll look down here, there's pretty close grouping in the number of total units sold during this time frame, and the amount that they grew over time was pretty close. We saw values going up 2 and 3, maybe 5%. As we start to move into the 14, 15s, 16s, you'll start seeing them move up. Between 18, 19, and 20, you saw 8%, 8%, 11% growth in median price. So again, it's a supply and demand problem. We don't have enough supply at the moment, so we are seeing some pretty significant bidding for the remaining stock. This is through half a year, and it's up 22%. Again, one of these graphs that kind of give you a sense of what was going on. And if I need to move along because I'm going too slow, let me know. That was
you're doing great.
That was the actual downturn that you saw there. So that's quite a bit of information that we have on the sales. I encourage you to go ahead and take a look at the various items we do have there. We didn't go over lots, but it'll give you another graph showing kind of what lot prices have done over time. And they just continue to go up.
Hey, Dwight, I don't know what you were going to hit next, but I think that for our committee, maybe the social data that talks about renters versus owners and then some of the income levels would be really helpful.
Okay. I'm going to go. So probably one of the most, I won't say data rich slide decks is in the social. You'll see that there's quite a bit of information in here that we can go through. The population itself, again, the only challenge that I find we have here is we are often waiting because we're using American Community Surveys data, and so it's 2019. There should be some new data out, and we'll be working to get that here in the third quarter. So we should have some 2020 data coming out of the census itself. So that would probably be the only concern that people might have as we look through this. At one time, we were also able to kind of keep track of population change and growth, and we were getting that from a combination of census data and also IRS data tracking where people were coming from. And in the last, we are now only able to get it through 2018. We're looking for some additional data sources to maybe get a little bit more current data on that. So as we try to populate that, and also for the in-migration is the same thing for 2018. So it doesn't really answer the question, where's everybody coming from? At the time that we saw it, most of them were coming out of the western regions were in migration. Some from the East Coast, some from the Midwest, but primarily from the West. Again, population pyramid in 2019, median age is right about 34, isn't that right? 32 median age. Slightly younger than Montana and the US. That would stand to reason with the university in town. These are some of the occupancy by all in the county, in Montana and the US. You can see income levels by renter versus owner. Missoula County is slightly ahead in owners, median income than Montana. And again, also in renters, but behind the US. And from the US Census, the poverty rate in 2019 was 11.5. And unemployment, after a spike all the way up to, I believe it was about 13%, may have even been higher than that. It fell to the end of 2020 to 5.9. I also want to point out that underneath all of the various visualizations, you'll often see kind of a more nuanced look or a narrative look at some of the information having to do with population changes, median income, migration. And we also put some information in there, the impact of COVID on unemployment. As we can understand, it's probably becoming a little bit stale even 8 months into the year. This is a housing price index that looks across the state. We've often been asked, why isn't Bozeman in there? Bozeman just became a metropolitan in the 2020 census, and so we should start seeing some information having to do with their housing price index. But again, you can kind of take this and say, how does Missoula compare to, say, the Mountain States?
Wait, Paul has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick one. What does the housing price index show?
It just is it's a rough index trying to take all the various locations, Billings, Great Falls, Missoula, and then index them against each other. If you wanted to get more in depth on how it actually is calculated, we can go into the Federal Housing Index, and it'll give you that information, Paul.
Okay, thanks.
If I can go back now. There we go. One of the other things I didn't do, and I'll show you, is you can actually expand this to full screen. Does that actually help visualizations a bit?
Yes, I don't think you can see the grid, but people are saying yes. Thank you, Dwight.
This is a housing affordability index that we have done for a number of years. It was done primarily based on 20% down and 5% down. And then we indexed it to one that is done by the National Association of Realtors for the United States so that we could get some kind of relativity to it. But over time, you can see at 100%, the median family household income should be able to afford the median household based on our median sales price at these various price points, a 5% down or a 20% down. And it's kind of flirted with 100%, but for the most part, the index has shown that it's been slightly below 100%. And then through 2018 kind of fell below that. If you had 20% down, it says that, and this was based primarily on decreasing interest rates, so that it doesn't feel more affordable, but the decreasing rates were enough to make the index show that it was affordable. However, if you only had 5% down, you did still stay below the line. So the average for the median price home, the median price income in Missoula, if you only had 5% down, you were not able to afford that house, is what that says. And we can go into the actual table itself. No, that doesn't get me to the table. Escape. Is there other additional information that you were looking for? Cost burden? So I believe this is homeowners and this is renters on the right-hand side of your screen. It says that in 2019, 24% of households were cost burdened, where renters, come on, slide over there.
Dwight, it looks like Paul had a question and on supply data.
Okay. Happy to go back, Paul.
Did I miss it? I thought there was a tab in there for supply, which feels like a key component to this, but maybe it blew past me.
When you, we can go to supply. Are you thinking of supply for rental homes, or are you thinking of supply for homeowners?
Both, to be honest with you. I was speaking only for myself, but I am interested in the supply side of this for both homeowners and renters. Yep.
Let's supply. Oh, here we go. So there is a supply tab. One of the things that we have measured over time is what we call the absorption rate. The absorption rate takes into account both the number of houses that are in the market and those that are sold in the last 30 days. You divide, and you would then calculate the number of months of supply that you actually have. And what has been historically looked at is a market between 9 months and 3 months is considered kind of a normal supply. If you're above 9 months, you're in an oversupply, kind of what they call a buyer's market. If you're below 3 months, you are an undersupply, a seller's market. And as you can see, we've calculated all the way back to 2010, coming out of the last downturn, economic downturn, they got to a point where they actually had 28 months of supply. When we go to our current second quarter, we're right at around 3 weeks of supply. So that kind of gives you some sense of what is going on. We then break it out also by neighborhood. So you can kind of take a look at these various neighborhoods, the number that is sold year to date, where the median price is year to date, and then the months of supply. We go from a high of 2 months of supply in Grant Creek, which also has the highest median, one of the highest median sales prices, to a low in South Hills of about 2 weeks worth of supply through the end of the second quarter. We also have kind of come up with a kind of a very basic way of looking at taking the absorption rate, what's been sold in the last 30 days, and trying to figure out what would we need to estimate to have a basically midpoint of normal supply, so 6 months supply. And if we use that, now the one thing it doesn't take into account, and the reason it is somewhat basic, is it doesn't take into account demand if we actually had more supply at the $150,000 range. So, we're just using what we do know, and that is we have sold a total of 7. There's 1 active, and the market says that if we had a normal supply, we should have about 7. So we're down by 6. So that's how you would read this. But what it does give us is it does give us kind of a rough thumbnail saying, if you were to have more of a normal supply, we should see about another 535 homes for sale in the market, as opposed to having 107 at this time actives at the end of the second quarter. Any questions on that? Again, you'll also see in here, somebody was looking at where have we had over time. In 2005, we sold 314 houses in the 0 to 150 category. And in 2020, there were 24. So you can kind of see this pink, the 300 to 450 has grown over time. The 150 to 300 has declined, and pretty precipitously since 2017.
I raised my own hand, but can I ask a question? Is that allowed?
Absolutely.
So I guess I wanted to ask about that 0 to 150 range, Dwight. Is that theoretical normal market listing of 7? Is that based on the current pricing in the market? Like, is that how you get to the 7 theoretical? That 7 would be normal?
Yes. I mean, again, that, like I said, the challenge of this particular simple model is it doesn't take into account what could be the demand for those.
Okay. So it's not the ideal, right? It's not the ideal that ideally there would be more units at the 0 to 150 range. It's that in the current market, there should be around 7 units.
Based on what the volume of sales, yes.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah. This is another kind of interesting set of graphs. This is going back to the maybe more to Paul's question, the supply side. What have we been creating? You have to start with subdivisions. You have to create plats, and from those preliminary plats, you run those through the process, get approval for them, and then from preliminary, then they would complete all the various elements, the conditions to get final approval so you can create lots and ultimately sell those lots in the marketplace. So this is the preliminary subdivisions that have been approved both in the city and the county since 2014. And you can see that with the exception of 2020, preliminary subdivisions have been kind of slim pickings. And a little bit more in the county, but if you were to say a rough number that we have, again, it's kind of an ideal, but we think that over time, there should be about 750 new housing units created every year to keep up with population growth and demand in the marketplace.
Dwight, it looks like there's a couple questions, one from
Yeah.
Heidi, one from Will.
Okay.
So my question is if you guys have a tally of how many like historically platted parcels are out there that are older, because I feel like they're like all those houses coming on in the South Hills are on plats that have been approved maybe like 20 years ago. Yeah, so I was curious if you have an actual tally of unbuilt lots that exist, not just what's been approved since 2014. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and it's something we've been trying to get our arms around for quite some time. And I know that there have been some studies done by the city, and I'm trying to remember the name of the actual policy, but we are continuing to work towards that. So that we can get a better sense of some of the older points. And as we go to the next slide, I think that will be pointed out that there are some subdivisions that are really quite old, and there's a lot of months. So, but there's been kind of a bubble, so to speak, in the marketplace where we've not been creating many subdivisions probably over the last 5 to 8 years, and so. Where I'm going with that is it's going to be harder for us to catch up, because some of these older subdivisions that are starting to come back on they're more profitable. They'll help, but we still need to continue on building a certain amount of subdivisions over time. Does that help? Will, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just curious. And subdivisions are definitely not my expertise. But I'm trying to think about like understanding the gap in the supply. There are other ways that we can meet that beyond just subdivisions. And I'm wondering how we like track those data. Like I think about the growth policies directive to like focus inward for development and like redeveloping lots. And they may not, and I don't know if this means like going through the formal subdivision process or if there's a way to like add to this, like what's planned for like non-subdivision development that would increase like the overall number of units available. And like, is there a way we can be tracking that data point too? So it's not just about subdivisions. Maybe this is it.
This is actually final plat, possibly I think in permits. Townhome exemption developments are often used as a product to do infill development, and so again, this is in the city of Missoula in 2019 there were 111 units created through TEDS. It's not used nearly. I mean, the county it's almost non-existent, but it dropped a little bit in 2020, and I've been trying to get some data for the first half of the year of 2021 to see where TEDs are. But this is probably an area that we track, which would be as close as I can think to, Will, what you're kind of hitting at within the inward growth.
In the top graph there,
these are total building permits.
And is that necessarily for new construction, or that could be for anything that you're pulling a residential building permit for, or like for rehab? Or
no, these would be new units, and they would be made up of both single family and multifamily. So again, if you want to take this and just say what were the single family units created.
And is it safe to assume 1-to-1 permit issued to unit, or this is just the permits issued, but may not be reflective of how many units?
So in multifamily, they often call it by doors. So this would show you that so far this year, there's been 770 units created or doors created for multifamily.
Cool. Thanks for explaining that.
So hopefully that helps you.
Christine, did you also have a question? I saw your hand, but it went down.
It went down because Dwight continued to explain and add on to Heidi's question. And so he answered my question in that process.
Great.
Well, thank you. All right. That's kind of what we have in supply. The only other thing I wanted to show you, and this kind of gets back to the discussion about some of these really, really old subdivisions. There's some out there that have been out there for 220 days between preliminary to final plat. And the nice thing of what I think this has done more than anything is it opens up the conversation. It poses the question, why? What are the elements that go into this that would create something that would be out there for almost 18 years? And so it's a complex question. There's not any one simple answer. You can't point fingers at any one particular element, but it does bring open a conversation that we're trying to explore right now with both regulatory bodies as well as the developers. Because I think it's ultimately everybody agrees we need to put more housing availability at all price points in the marketplace. That is probably as much as you can take of me today. Hopefully it's been insightful. We want to be a good trusted source of good hard data. And so any questions that you have that we can tighten that up, we appreciate the feedback. I think City Council Member West brought up some good points that I think that we continue to talk about in both the preliminary plat and final plat and trying to tighten that up as well. So we do appreciate that.
Dwight, it looks like Will had a question.
I just am thinking back to the slide that showed like the housing affordability index. And basically right now, if you can afford 20% down, we're outpacing the affordability, but if you're in the 5% down, you can't. And I just think for like purposes of things that could potentially be brought through the funding application for the Housing Trust Fund, I know down payment assistance is one of the thoughts with that. So it would seem like that data would support that, like the area to focus on for anything related to down payment assistance would be, how could you help somebody get to that 5% down? And does that work? Like, will a lender accept like a grant like that to get them to the 5%? Or do they have to have 5% of their own cash to do it? So I guess it's like a two-part question. Go ahead.
Maybe I'm thinking it might be inversed. If you have 20% down, then it becomes affordable. If you only have 5% down, you're still well below the affordability.
Oh, so it doesn't even matter if you could help with the down payment. It's the monthly payment that is unaffordable at that point.
Ultimately, you need to get it to where, yeah, your payment would be affordable at 20% down. At 5% down, you're underwater, so to speak.
Got it. So there might be some tipping point between 5 and 20% if you could get like a buyer there, that then the monthly payment becomes affordable.
Possibly. I think also as we look at the different products in the marketplace, townhomes, condos, sometimes those can be more affordable. I often liken it to the first rung on the ladder. As we're talking about getting people into home ownership, how do we get them to the first rung of the ladder? Because once they get into the first rung of the ladder, there's different, as we move up and you develop equity, then you go to the next rung, you can go up higher, but how do you get them into equity positions where they can start building that wealth for the family? And so.
And Dwight, it looks like Heidi had another question.
I actually don't have a question, but I was looking over my notes from the MOR presentation earlier this year, and I was wondering if I could add like two things I wrote down that I think Jim from the Housing Authority said during this presentation that I thought were important, especially for renters. Do you care?
You have the floor.
Sure. Okay, so one thing that was pointed out, and I'm sure it's out of date at this point, was that The rent increase, and I don't remember when this presentation was, it was like the summer maybe, at the time was 6.73%. But the important thing that Jim highlighted is that our rents in Missoula have actually gone above what the housing authority is legally allowed to pay. So that's really challenging for folks that are on the lower income level, is just that there aren't even, I guess, rents that the voucher or the, that the limits can apply to, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's the only, that was a big takeaway I wrote down.
Thank you. And it looks like Lori had a question, Dwight.
Yeah, not so much a question, just to build on what Heidi said. The FMRs this year at the Housing Authority, the fair market rent is going up 4%, but the rents that we're seeing are going up 14%. So there is still a big gap between in the affordability of rentals in Missoula. And Heidi's right, the rents are oftentimes higher than we're allowed to subsidize at the Housing Authority. And we've requested from HUD an exception from those rents so that we can go higher, but we haven't heard back from them yet.
There is about 5 slides in rental. So if you want to kind of go through those various, it would have a little bit more information. We didn't even touch on it. So that kind of gives you some idea of what's in there. Is there anything else that we can provide? Once again, we try to keep this thing fairly current in those areas where we have the best data, and that would be the MLS data that we then can keep that up quarterly. When we rely on some of the government data, that will end up being invariably annually, but we do try to keep it somewhat current so that you can make hopefully some at least informed decisions from what is going on in the Missoula marketplace. I'll go back and see what I can do is find out about the median for the city and get back to Emily. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to come in and speak about our report. We hope that this is helpful to you.
Thank you so much. It looks like Christine had.
The one thing I'm wondering, and I don't know the legalities around it. I don't know how we're able to generate questions or questions of inquiry when people are buying homes. But one of the statistics or metrics that I recently heard from a local economist is that there's a significant percentage of individuals who move back home at a certain time in their life. And when we talk about an influx coming back in, and this wouldn't change the situation as far as the supply and demand, but I have a curiosity as we continue to figure out how to embrace the changes of Missoula, and wonder if having that information and understanding where our influx is coming from, and if those are individuals who are trying to come back home, which could be a myriad of things, went to the University of Montana, loved Missoula, couldn't find employment in 2012. I've always wanted to get back. Just might help wrap our minds and our hearts around the change and the growth that we're seeing if we had some of that data. And I don't know if that's possible at all.
I don't know if that data is stuff that more could collect. I can tell you from my personal experience, all out-of-state buyers I've had fall into 2 categories of like people wanting to move home who went to college from here, or grandparents whose kids live here with grandkids and now they're retiring and moving here to be close. And so I don't see people just haphazardly moving in. And most agents I talk to do not say that either. It's kind of those two categories. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dwight, but some of our data comes from more from lenders than it comes from, because because realtors can't ask some of those questions, but some of those are coming from lending.
I would point you possibly to the discussion that we had starting out, where we talk about some of the stories. There's also, talks a little bit of the migration. The other thing, Christine, would be some of the ACS data. So the American Community Survey data that comes from the census does give you household sizes. And, you can infer different things from whether or not those are expanding or contracting. And possibly how they compare to other comparable communities. But that would be the only two things. It's not something that we've actually looked at directly, but it is, some things that we have discussed, the expanding and contracting. Because sometimes you wonder, at least I have out loud wondered, where are these people who are buying houses coming if we're not expanding our population that fast? So I think out of the last economic downturn, they came out of somebody's basement or somebody's couch, or what I'm saying. They just they were here, but they were not counted as an individual housing unit, and they went out and created their own through either getting an apartment or buying a house or something along those lines. But I don't have empirical data, so I'm not going to use that as a data point.
Well, thank you, both of you, for fleshing that out just a little bit.
Thank you, Dwight. Is there any last minute questions? Great. Thank you for joining us and all of the information. It's very helpful.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. And it looks like we will move on to committee and equity building. Emily, were you presenting on that?
Yes, I am. And I just want to note, so we have a chat feature. We're not supposed to have that. We turned it on for another meeting I needed. But because this is on YouTube and it will be a recording available, as much as possible, if you can please share your comments with the group verbally, that would be great, so that the public can participate. They will not see your chat. And so we just want to make sure that the public has access to your chat. So we've been sure to do that facilitation so far, but I just wanted to mention that. And in future times, the chat will be turned off. We just didn't have it done in time. So normally my Zoom doesn't have a chat. Lori, did you have a question? And then I think Christine has her hand raised too.
Actually, I was just going to respond to Christine's note in the chat.
Thank you. That was one I was missing.
Yeah, she says, is that request, this was the request for higher payment standards that we can use for vouchers. And she asked if that request was a request that's historically been asked for in other communities and successfully secured. And the answer is no. This is a special allowance from HUD for COVID impacted communities. And so it's directly related to COVID. We've never been allowed to do this before. There are minor exceptions in the payment standard as a reasonable accommodation, but this is not something that's been done before. And like I said, we haven't heard back from them yet. So it's kind of a one-time deal.
Thanks, Lori. Christine, your hand is raised too. Do you have a question?
I was just going to thank Lori as well, and my hand was raised to prompt that question out loud. I did put it in the chat. I was also just going to say thank you to Dwight, but he popped off, and let him know that that was in the chat. But he was extremely thorough, and I've been through this report in a couple presentations, and I just wanted to say out loud that he did a really nice job and walked us through a lot of additional features that I haven't seen. So it was really helpful.
Great. I'm glad that that was helpful. And I appreciate him joining us as well. So we're going to shift a little bit and we're going to revisit the charter again. I think it's our third month, maybe fourth, talking about it. And for those who were not with us in August, I'll just recap a little. The consensus of the group was to move forward with a group charter. And really, I'll just summarize kind of some of the discussion was really to have a document that gives the community just some key highlights of the work that you're doing and summarizes your bylaws and summarizes some of the other key documents that you are working from so that the community doesn't have to do the digging and the work to find what you're all about. I hope that's a fair summary. And so we are really at the stage of setting your vision and then reviewing your equity principle work, which is a summary that I took from your first discussion around the question of the open-ended question of what does it mean to center equity for the Affordable Housing Resident Oversight Committee? And then I took that discussion and made your bullet pointed equity principles. So we need to check in on those and see if those resonate with you as a committee and if there are things that are missing as well. And then you all need to decide if you're ready to affirm this charter and move forward and then be done, or if you need more time with it. So we have a good amount of time today to talk about it. And I just wanted, can you see my screen? No. Oh boy, I'm gonna get this right when they say it's time to meet in person again. I'm gonna be so good at Zoom by that time. Now you can see it, right? Okay, so I just pulled some kind of key pieces of setting a vision for you all. And I'm sure you have some ideas too around setting a vision, but just some key pieces and ideas around setting a vision for a charter include being concise and clear, making it future oriented and abstract. So you don't want to necessarily get too in the weeds of what you're doing as a committee. This is a great place to harness your inspiration and really make it like goal and vision and, well, it's in the name, but really inspiring. And then reflect your purpose. And it can be a sentence, it can be a few bullet points, it can be a short statement, it can really be however you all want it to look. But these can be a few kind of guideposts of how you can set it. And I haven't done any of this work for you on this. And I really thought that what we would do is just open it up for discussion and see where you all want to start. And I'll take some notes in your document and I can demonstrate some of your norms and be vulnerable in real time, and you can watch me type on YouTube. Isn't that fun? And we can just make it as we go and then see where we get in our allotted time today, if that works. And I really just hope this is an opportunity for you all to have discussion about your purpose as a committee on the Affordable Housing Resident Oversight Committee, how you see our relationship in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the Oversight Committee and our dynamic and relationship, and just think about that vision and your purpose and our purpose as partners. So I'm going to stop there. And well, first I'm going to ask, is that enough guidance, or is there anything else that would be helpful? Okay, then I'm going to stop there. And I'm going to, oops, I gave you a spoiler. What's next? I'm going to open up this document, which you can see now, the charter. Okay. And I'm just going to ask you guys to start thinking about things, and you can really just kind of brainstorm. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just what you're thinking, what's on your minds.
Yeah, so something that gets me, especially after watching that presentation, is equity. I think when we start looking at numbers and the area median income, and it's like, for example, 430,000, I would happen to say that a large percentage of the population of Missoula probably can't afford that. And I feel like it's incredibly important for this committee to be devoted to equity and to doing work that makes housing accessible for all Missoulians, whether living on the streets, whether a student, going to college, family, just everyone, because we're a community. We want to make sure that we're all doing this together.
Okay.
Emily, you're typing, so I'm just going to start speaking, I think, if that's okay.
That's great.
I think when I think of a vision statement, I imagine us stating something that helps us hold ourselves accountable to our own interaction and commitment to process as a committee, and then perhaps a statement that is broader and speaks directly to the opportunities that we're trying to create. And one of those opportunities, obviously, Riley just communicated, but I think I would love to see a statement that something like this committee is intent on thoughtful leadership, being present, being informed, being willing to learn, and then follow whatever that myriad. I don't know that I have all those thoughts, but and then follow that with a statement of how we're going to strive to leverage the opportunities that are in front of us.
I think I'm missing some of them, Christine.
Okay.
But I'll get them. We'll get them.
I know I was talking fast, and I can kind of say it again if you need me to. Just let me know.
Okay, thank you. And then Missy, I see your hand. I have being informed, but I'm missing, there was something about
being
missing one.
informed, being present,
being present,
being willing to learn. I think another piece is, I think it feeds into all those, is maybe that we're research driven or data driven. I don't know how to say that without overstating it, but that we're committed to paying attention to the data and how it's changing. I don't know, something.
I'm just pulling out some ideas and making typos. Misty?
Sorry, I was having sound issues for a second. So I am on a similar plane as Christine. I was thinking something that could keep us accountable is something to the effect of self-aware and critical, and knowing that each of us, we are mere community members that are attempting to do something for the greater good of Missoulians, and all come from like our own different backgrounds, and that we are trying to use like quantitative data to do that. But then something that I've loved about this committee thus far is that we are also aware that these are people, that like we're doing this for people, and that's something that I think is really meaningful. Like just that somebody brought up like, well, who, like these people coming into Missoula, they're not just statistics or people like buying up all this property. They're people coming home or coming to be with their grandparents. So like doing the both of best worlds, and then also just attempting to acknowledge that and keep us accountable to be self-aware and to be aware of our community as it grows and changes. Because I think that we all know that COVID has really changed things pretty rapidly, and will continue to do so with strange effects. So those are some of my thoughts.
Thanks, Misty. I'm making notes. That doesn't mean they're perfect sentences of what you both said, but we can fix them as we go. What else?
Perfect.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Katie?
I was just going to kind of follow up on what Misty said as far as COVID. I feel like a lot of the shift in the market has been driven by COVID because people can move back here and work remotely. And also grandparents who, now just want to spend time with their kids because they haven't seen them in so long. So I was just going to say that. And then my other thought about the vision is I just think it's going to take a lot of innovative thinking and new ideas to come up with ways to increase just the supply of both the rental and the housing market. And so I guess that would be my focus on, innovation and creative thinking.
Misty, is that a new hand?
Nope, I'll take it
Okay.
down. Thank you.
What else? Well,
Thank you. I mentioned this in our first meeting, but I think about the connection of this committee to the initial, the housing policy and the kind of, I think this is a sub point of equity potentially, but I think the committee having a responsibility to make sure that all neighborhoods throughout Missoula are contributing, and that we're not just concentrate. One thing I think about as a practical matter is if we see application after application is all going to one particular neighborhood to develop all this housing, I think that's something that we need to be responsible to say hey, what happened to what was in the housing policy about the whole community participating in this? And some kind of equitable distribution and equitable distribution of the both responsible and opportunity for affordable housing development across neighborhoods.
okay, you said that better.
Honestly, it's said best in the housing policy. I'm paraphrasing, but it's no neighborhood should have all the responsibility and no neighborhood should be exempt. Something like that. That's probably the best wordsmithing that exists. Whoever wrote that, I don't know, Heidi, was that you?
Heidi?
I think the one thing I want to add is empowering individuals to be able to provide solutions to the housing challenges. I think right now big players are organizations and really complicated funding sources, and if there's a way we could let regular old people feel like they have impact, I think that would be great. I think we're headed there, but
yeah. Heidi, what did you, I missed your word. Did you say housing challenges?
Yeah.
Is that what you said? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. there's a lot here. Is there anything else people want to add? This is great. This is a great vision. And now I'm going to ask someone to make it into a sentence or 2 sentences. Who's going to do it?
I already have tried.
Christine, that
I'm
rocks.
a fast typer, so I was trying, but that doesn't mean, it's a draft.
That's great.
Do you want me to try and share my screen?
Sure. I think, Zoe, that'll work, right?
Yeah, she should be able to.
Okay.
Alice, yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can make that happen.
Thank you.
This will stop. Oh, you need to stop.
Oh, I have to stop.
And then I think I have to expand it a little. What's happening? There we go. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay. And it's long. I'll go like that for easier reading. And I don't know if we can steal the sentence from the place to call home either, but.
Oh, sure. We borrow from each other all the time.
I agree with Will. It was very well written, so.
We're in relationship with each other. All of our documents.
Could you, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, Heidi, I think Heidi still has her hand up.
Heidi, do you have a question?
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, could you delete distributed through all neighborhoods and just make it a period? Because it kind of
Yep.
Yep. And then can you bring, we will operate with self-awareness. Actually, can you bring innovative and creative thinking, that sentence up to the top, or like up to the first paragraph, the last sentence, the first paragraph?
I'm not reading this the way that you are, Katie, but does the sentence still make sense? We will strive to leverage opportunities that create more safe, equitable, and accessible
Places. Oh, I'm sorry. Accessible places for all Missoulians, period.
Do we want to say homes?
Oh, homes. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. And then after challenges, maybe say, and we will operate with the awareness and self-awareness of our community as it grows and changes. And then I think I would just delete, we are aware that those entering the community for the first time are also people. And well, yeah. So under, yeah, after challenges, just put a period.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So have it say, challenges period, we will operate with the awareness and self-awareness of our community as it grows, knowing those who enter for the first time. Or yeah, I think.
Riley has his hand up.
Go ahead, Riley.
Yeah, I want to do talk about that sense of the accessible homes for all Missoulians. So something that we're seeing in my work is that a lot of people are shifting away from the word homeless because just because people don't necessarily have walls around them or a shelter doesn't necessarily mean they don't have a home. Because it's those who are experiencing housing insecurity in Missoula still call Missoula their home. They just don't have a house. So it's just something to think on.
Do you have a suggestion for a change in how we phrase that?
I mean, homes definitely have some better alliteration. I like places, or we're not going to get into domiciles. I'm kind of getting into the weeds with my grammar here. but just in an effort to kind of, I guess, not stigmatize some folks who kind of already have that stigma around them.
Thanks. Yeah.
Emily, did you want to?
Yeah, I just want to offer in the first sentence, the name of the committee is the Affordable Housing Resident Oversight Committee.
Thank you.
Will and Riley, was your hand still up? Okay, Will, go ahead.
Yeah, I totally understand what Riley is saying about places, and I realize like this, it's like maybe getting a little choosy on words, but I think places could imply, I mean, maybe it's all implied because it's the Affordable Housing Resident Community Oversight Committee, but I think like we are charged with housing. And so I just wonder if it's worth being specific that it is housing, because like places could imply like a whole host of things. And but Riley, yeah, so you put your hand up, curious what your thoughts are on that.
I actually think that's a great point. If maybe we exchange places for housing, I think it would also be a little bit more to the point of, like you're saying, well, what this committee is for, without shifting people to sides, if that makes sense.
Yeah, cool.
Hi, Heidi.
I was actually also going to suggest housing because I felt like places could be, that sounds too similar to the mission of the like parks department. So.
I think that last sentence doesn't work, but I was hoping somebody else had a suggestion.
Riley, did you have your hand up again, or Will?
So I'm just curious, what are we trying to get at? And what is the change, knowing who enter it the first time? Is that like entering Missoula for the first time, entering the housing market for the first time? I might have missed when somebody mentioned that line.
I think it originally said knowing those who enter for the first time are people, and I think we dropped the people, but then it's not quite coming together. So if you had suggestions.
And does that mean like people like moving to Missoula are people too? Is that what that, or people who are entering the housing market for the first time are people?
Christina, do you remember who had that sentence originally?
That was Misty.
I think
Misty brought up the
yeah.
person-centered.
Yeah, we can, I mean, yeah, I was just getting at that we need to be both data and person-centered, which I think we already are. And if there's a way that we could communicate that, that's fine. If we can't, that's also fine. But that's what my intent was.
I wonder if there's a way to accomplish that in the first line, where it's like present, informed, like maybe it's data driven instead of research driven, and like, I don't know. I don't have the right answer here, but the words that come to mind are something around like community oriented, yeah, community minded, people centered, mission oriented. I don't know, but something like that. So it's like kind of keep in mind. I don't know. But
Did you say mission oriented?
yeah, but I don't think that's the right one. I was just brainstorming what
Okay, no,
came
just
to
wanted
mind.
to check. Okay.
Heidi?
Sorry, I'm going to skip to the last sentence briefly. I was thinking it could be trimmed down. Innovation and creative thinking from all communities is integral to and then the rest to providing solutions to housing challenges or something like that.
Maybe should I just read it out loud? I think sometimes that helps too. Is that a nod or yeah, thumbs up? Okay. The Affordable Housing Resident Oversight Committee is committed to thoughtful leadership that is present, informed, data-driven, community-minded, and willing to learn. We will strive to leverage opportunities that create more safe, equitable, and accessible housing for all Missoulians. No neighborhood should have all responsibility, and no neighborhood should be exempt. Innovation and creative thinking from all communities is integral to providing solutions to housing challenges. We will operate with awareness and self-awareness of our community as it grows and changes. It's not bad. It's a little long, but it's not bad.
You have Riley and Lori, and I saw them go up at the same time. So whoever wants to go first. And I just need to do a time check that I need probably to move on at 7:45 to the next item.
Lori, you can go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the same, Riley. Thanks. I'm a little confused by saying innovation and creative thinking from all communities is integral. And I think I understand what Heidi means by this, but I think it's a little confusing for someone outside reading it, because which communities? Are we talking, Bozeman? Or are we talking different people within our community? Yeah, I like community members, I think, better.
I think you shortened the sentence a bunch anyway, didn't you, Heidi? I feel like we deleted a whole, yeah. Riley?
Yeah, I'm definitely happy Lori went first because it helps click this in for me. So with the no neighborhood should have all responsibility and no neighborhood should be exempt, is there a way that we could move that behind the innovation and creative thinking? Just where it's at in the paragraph feels very blocky, and kind of like a fist pounding on the table. And maybe just, I like the point that we're getting at, that this is like a community-wide event, that it's all of our responsibility. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can kind of explain a little more and reword that sentence.
Which sentence? I'm sorry, I don't think I...
The no neighborhood should have all responsibility and no neighborhood should be exempt. So reading it, innovation and creative thinking coming from all community members is integral to providing solutions to housing challenges. Like if we could do a little segue about how, this is a community-wide effort and no neighborhood should have to bear all of the responsibility of projects or should be exempt. It just feels very, how it's worded feels very authoritarian to me.
Will?
So yeah, I was thinking the same thing, that language probably isn't best. I looked at what's in the housing policy and I don't know if it really fits, but the way I think we could word that is responsibility for housing, like responsibility for these housing solutions should be equally distributed throughout all Missoula neighborhoods or something like that. Or maybe equitably distributed. I don't know which is the better word to use there.
I like that.
Yeah, I agree, Riley. I think it was, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Christine.
Oh, no, you're fine. I'll come back to this word right here.
Yeah, I think equitably might be. And maybe distributed isn't the right verb there. I don't know if someone has a better, but I agree with Riley that I think the way it was phrased before it's kind of out of context.
I have my hand up. Katie, do you want to call on me or can I?
Okay, Emily.
I really enjoy this discussion and the conversation about neighborhood responsibility. I also want to just highlight the like relationship to other work that's going on in other committees and in the city. And I'm wondering about like the rest of your vision talks about what you'll do. And so I'm wondering if that sentence should be focused on how you will, as a committee, ensure that that vision of neighborhood responsibility is upheld and what your role in that is. And I don't know if that resonates with others, but that sentence to me just reads a little bit like a value statement, which is really important, but doesn't have an action behind it, which the other parts of your vision do. I just wanted to name that.
Mm-hmm.
Will?
Very good point. So I'd recommend that we could say the committee will provide oversight to ensure housing solutions are equitably distributed across Missoula's neighborhoods. We could even add in accordance with I keep wanting to say making Missoula home, but that's the wrong housing policy. A place to call home, like in accordance with a place to call home.
I think it could also be a place to name your allocation plan, or or like the things that you distinctly have access and role in, could also be a place.
Like the committee will leverage the allocation plan to, I don't know. Does it need to be that specific though, if this is just the vision?
It feels a little bit like we're getting in the weeds, but
yeah.
That's true. I told you not to do that. Don't do that.
Emily, because we only have a couple more minutes, would it be best to kind of table this for the next time? And could we send out this to the committee and people can kind of like wordsmith it between now and the next meeting?
Yes, I think so. Christine, will you send me this between the meeting of where you think the most of it is landing, and I'll send it out and you all can work on it, and then we'll plop it in, place it in, and then we can review the whole charter and you can decide if you're ready to vote and adopt it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great work. Great discussion. Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
So moving on to the innovation round.
Yep. So I'm going to go back. Are you back on my PDF?
Yes.
Okay. So I wanted to give an update on the innovation round. The innovation round that you all affirmed and allocated $300,000 toward in August meeting launched like 5 days later. And so I wanted to give an update on the innovation funding round workshop. I just want to name that because it's an open funding round, and there may be applicants in this open meeting. I'm going to give a highlight of the funding workshop, but I'm not going to give like any more information to the committee that I would give in the funding workshop or to any of the applicants. So just in a like spirit of fairness. So just want to name that. And yeah, but I'm really excited to share what we've done in the last month and answer any questions that you have. And a couple of things have changed since I gave you the vision, just from a logistics perspective. So want to give you an update. So on August 23rd, we opened the round. And on the 25th, we hosted a Zoom webinar. We had 18 participants. And we provided an overview of the innovation round and the application process. We highlighted the use of Engage Missoula. I'm going to show you the application page tonight. And participants shared their project ideas. It was a really fun workshop. I thought I had fun. And I know Lori, you participated, and Katie, you joined for a little while, right? Oh, you didn't join. But I think there were others on. Sorry, I thought so. I can't remember. I've had a lot of late meetings lately. But we had a really good time and a great discussion about just generally the trust fund and what's to come. So I thought it was a really great opportunity to engage with the community. So I did want to circle back and share that since our last meeting, the fiscal year 2022 budget has been approved. And scenario A that I shared with you in the innovation round vision was adopted. We're very thankful to the mayor's budget and to city council for their leadership in approving and allocating the requested awards to the trust fund. So we are expecting to have $3.4 million in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for fiscal year 2022. And that is comprised of the rollover budget of $726,000 from fiscal year 21, the $2 million anticipated land sale from Scott Street, the American Rescue Plan Act allocation of $600,000, and then the general fund allocation of $100,000. Yeah. And so an overview of the innovation round that we shared in the workshop, there's $300,000 available for projects that preserve or increase affordable housing in Missoula. It's open to nonprofit and for-profit organizations, and that includes new and in-process projects. We're awarding both grants and loans, and the unified application round for both community development block grant and home investment partnerships and the trust fund will be released as a unified application in the winter. So this is really kind of the opportunity to test that prior to that award. So it's a great opportunity for that. And the eligible projects, this is something that's changed since we presented the vision to you. The eligible projects for this innovation round include consumer housing service programs, construction of homes and rental, including acquisition, construction, and rehabilitation, and the preservation programs, which include small repair loans, multi-dwelling acquisition, mobile and manufactured home preservation and infrastructure assistance, and community land trusts. And we decided to remove the accessory dwelling unit program. And that was a decision we made after determining that it's just not ready for prime time, honestly. There are just more questions than we have answers for this time. It doesn't mean, Christine, I see your question, just one second. It doesn't mean that if there are projects that have accessory dwelling units as a component of their project, that they would be disqualified, but we're just not running a program for accessory dwelling units at this time. Christine?
I was just curious, as you keep using the word we, and we see you in front of us, I'm wondering who we also entails when you're having these conversations and when changes are made outside of our committee meetings, so that we just have a little bit more background of engagement.
Great question. It's typically me. I am just a more collaborative person. So when I think about my manager and working in collaboration with Zoe and other people, I think if anyone else besides me touches a project, then I use we, because I don't take credit for something if anyone else works on it. Yeah, thanks for asking. But typically right now in the trust fund, I am the primary staff. But it doesn't mean that we're not collaborating as a division and as a housing team, and the federal grants administrators have collaborated a lot on this application as well. Will?
Thanks. Sorry if I missed this, but what's the Centralized Housing Solutions Fund?
Great question. So the Centralized Housing Solutions Fund is essentially a pot of flexible funding that is used for people who are exiting their experiences of houselessness and have found creative solutions to end that experience and need flexible funding to end that experience. Riley might be able to answer it better than me, but it could be like a deposit, one-time housing assistance, things like that. And it's operated from the coordinated entry system. Riley, do you want to add anything more?
I am just having a day on Zoom. No, you nailed it. The big thing that I kind of just want to touch on is a very common use of the Centralized Housing Solution Fund is first month's rent and deposit.
And just a follow-up question, that's sort of what I figured. I see that there's rental education programs, and sorry that I don't remember, but is one of the approved potential uses for Housing Trust Fund just recurring rental assistance? And if so, is that included in one of these categories, or was the reason it was excluded?
It's not currently, ongoing rental assistance is not currently an activity.
Okay, it's not an approved activity. Okay.
So last meeting, we talked about scoring criteria really briefly. And I think Ms. C, you had some great questions about in more detail, and we just didn't have it developed yet, but we do now. So I wanted to give you more detail about it. So the scoring rubric was shared with the application materials, and there's a total of 220 points available for applicants, and there's 200 baseline points, and then there's a total of 20 bonus points. And the total scoring criteria is broken out by categories of project design, demonstrated knowledge of community need, impact of outcomes, financial feasibility, readiness and timeliness of the project, committed match funds. There is a requirement that, as you know from the housing policy, that projects bring a 25% match to the project, and then completeness of application. And that will be something that the staff will score. And then the bonus categories that we're testing this round are preventing displacement, innovation, and then the funding request type, which is projects that request a loan will get an automatic 10 points. And we're just testing some of the ways that we might incent bringing money back to the fund, because we know that, or we don't know, but we're hypothesizing that grants might be the most requested fund type if we don't otherwise incent that. So we're just testing out some ways to do that. And then in innovation, promoting diverse housing types, unique funding models, including co-ops and ownership opportunities, and then also alignment to citywide goals like climate action, commitments, and other priorities. So we're just seeing if there are opportunities to see what innovative ideas are out there with projects and capitalize on those. And we are still putting together the scoring committee, but I can share that there will be 8 members of internal city staff. It will be primarily community planning, development, and innovation staff, but from diverse knowledge backgrounds and roles. And then we are working to identify a council member to participate, which is pretty standard for our scoring committees. And we've expanded. We don't usually have a committee of 8. We're seeing if that will give us a more robust discussion and all of those pieces. And those are also things that we're testing for that unified application round that will include the federal grant making team as well. So we're just excited to see what we learn. And then the application timeline, we're in September now, so the applicants need to let me know by September 20th if they're going to apply. That's because I have to make them a folder so that they can submit their materials. Applications are due on the 24th of September, and then we'll do scoring. These are tentative dates, but we'll do our scoring process with the internal scoring committee in early October, and then we hope to bring our recommendations to City Council in late October and start the public hearing process in early November, and hope to have that finalized sometime in mid-November. And then we will share updates with this committee as well as we have them. And one thing, we have a little 1 minute of time. I just want to share, if you all are familiar, I'm not sure with Engage Missoula, but we are using Engage Missoula as our platform for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Innovation Round. And I think it's a really cool platform. Zoe created this application site for us. And it really just creates a one-stop shop for applicants to get all the information they need. It has the workshop webinar right here, a timeline for them of where they need to be in the process, information about the process. We're also using no one's asked a question yet, but we're using a live ask a question feature so that there's transparency in the process. And if an applicant has a question, they can ask it and then we'll answer it within 1 business day. And then another applicant will be able to see those questions. And we have posted all of the documents and all the application materials on Engage Missoula. And we're just really excited about having that platform to be able to use. And we hope that it will be something we can use in future rounds as well. So that is what we have as a highlight of the innovation round and where we are. And I'm really excited about getting to share more updates with you as we get further in the funding round. What questions are there that I can answer in a minute? Riley?
Not particular a question. I just want to say I felt like today's meeting went very well. I feel like there's a lot of really good discussions and still that kind of commitment towards everyone being on the same level of educating each other about what words mean, and just really, really grateful to have the opportunity to kind of serve on this committee with everyone.
Great. Thanks for that feedback. So,
Is there any other comments about how today's meeting went in general? Great. Well, I guess if there's nothing else, do we need a motion to adjourn?
I think so.
Yeah. Does somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'm happy to make it. And I'll just say, I thought the meeting went very well. I think a lot of times when you ask for feedback, like if things ran smoothly, everybody's just kind of like, oh, it was great, and they don't say that. So just, yeah, nice job. And I move to adjourn.
Great. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you. Oh, Lori, did you have one last?
I was voting aye.
Oh, okay. Everybody have a good evening and we'll see you in a month. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Nice job, Katie.
Thanks.
Good job.